A very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:49 is the time. Let's turn our attention to net zero because, well, let's face it, that underpins many of our economic crises that we are facing right now. Let's talk to Harry Wilkinson. He's Head of Policy of the Global Warming Policy Foundation. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. Let's talk about our energy bills because they've gone sky high. They're not going up as much. They've gone down a bit, but they are still all sky high. I never don't get my monthly bill and think, wow, how right, everyone turn the heating down, stop using the dryers, start behaving. And a lot of people are really struggling to pay those bills. Many people in arrears, we know. Now we've got an idea from Ofgem, who is supposed to represent customers, I thought, and our interest. And this is an idea to help, well, sort of cover some of the costs of our energy bills. And the idea is that those of us who earn a bit more, middle classes, are going to have to pay more for our energy. How is this going to work?
Well, net zero has always been regressive. You know, we've seen subsidies for wealthier households to get EVs and heat pumps, for example, solar panels on their roofs. And as they bought solar panels, for example, or installed heat pumps, you know, their consumption on the grid reduces and you have to reclaim money through increasingly standing charges because those customers still rely on a national grid that provides them electricity when maybe there isn't much sun shining on their house. Yep. So, you know, that has forced upstanding charges, which is really hurting poorer customers.
Because a lot for poorer customers who, like, you know, living in a smaller home and using less electricity, they haven't got a dryer, they might not even have a washing machine at home, they haven't got the dishwasher, so they're just simply not using as much energy, they haven't got, like, you know, 5 bedrooms or anything. So they're using less energy. So a bigger percentage of their bill is that standing charge. Like, just to be connected to the grid, you pay this sum whether you use anything or not.
That's right. And I think there's 2 options here. One of them could be to have that on general taxation, which would be more progressive in the sense that rich people would pay more. And there's even suggestions that there should be progressive pricing in people's bills. I think that's totally unrealistic. The actual effort to go to administering that would probably outweigh any benefits. And people's circumstances change all the time, and that would be very difficult to administer. Yeah. But let's get back to the point here. The perspective is all wrong. We could be having much cheaper electricity.
It's like the winter fuel payment for pensioners. The solution is actually for people to be able to afford to pay for energy.
We need cheaper electricity for everyone. You know, we put what's known as the ETS, Emissions Trading Scheme price, on the price of gas-fired electricity, which sets the price of wholesale electricity in the market. That means everyone pays more for their electricity bills than they would be otherwise.
That's where, like, the last unit of energy that you use, you take it from that price, and that always pushes the price. But I mean, that's not something like that the international markets require. That's a decision the British government takes.
Exactly.
Why do they do that? Why are we in massive debt and paying huge amounts of tax and right now to pay for that energy subsidy that we all had to have because we couldn't afford our bills in 22 and it went sky high? Why are we doing that when they could actually make our bills lower simply by just adjusting that way of setting the price?
Because they're putting net zero in front of all other considerations, because they're actually about to increase it, because we're about to join the EU's emission trading scheme, which has more expensive prices at the moment than our scheme. So we're about to make things worse. You know, this isn't a government that's listening and trying to get prices down. This is a government that's ignoring the public and saying we're just going to have higher prices because it's more important for us to meet the green agenda than to get bills down.
But were we not told by the Labour Party, by Ed Miliband, the climate hysteria Secretary of State, because that's what he is, that we were going to have lower bills? They were, at one point, I think they said our bills would go down by £1,000. I mean, then there was a £300 figure that our bills were going to go down by £300. They've gone up, not down.
We're going to be waiting a very long time before we see these savings. And the reason is we have to just keep building more and more infrastructure to connect up these wind turbines.
Oh, but wait a minute. But when that's all built, when we've got a whole load of wind turbines and the whole of our countryside is paved over with solar panels, then we'll have cheap energy, right?
Well, you would think so. But Miliband insists on paying really high prices for wind energy. In the last auction, prices rose by over 50%. And in this latest auction, he wants to extend those prices to be 20-year contracts up from 15. So he wants to lock in these high prices for renewables for decades to come. So this is just pushing the horizon out to when we can finally fix these problems further and further into the future.
But again, if renewables were also reliable and affordable, we wouldn't need any subsidies, wouldn't need to do any of this, because we'd all be using it anyway, wouldn't we? Let's also talk about, I mean, very much linked, let's talk about the Reform UK Party. Richard Tice, the deputy leader, he's branded Ed Miliband an eco-zealot, I think not unreasonably, and he's launched what he calls an energy war against Labour, fighting against pylons and solar farms that he says are an eyesore. I couldn't agree with him more. I have a visceral reaction when I drive past beautiful swathes of countryside with massive big wind turbines in, usually not turning, by the way, and basically saying, they've already said, I think a week or so ago, we are not going to provide subsidies. You may not think this is quite such a good market to get involved with, to the green energy companies that are making a fortune right now.
Let's be clear. This infrastructure, these pylons, these turbines, they are a blight on the countryside. But we do need more energy infrastructure. It would be NIMBYist just to say we should not build this if there weren't other alternatives. There are other alternatives. There's cheaper alternatives that we're deliberately making more expensive. And there's cheaper green alternatives as well. Look at South Korea, where they're building very cheap nuclear power stations because they have a much healthier regulatory environment, and they don't have, new nuclear power stations have to actually write hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pages of environmental impact assessments before they can even build a nuclear power station. That costs millions and millions in itself, only to be locked up in a room somewhere. No one's ever going to look at this. This is a pointless bureaucracy factory that's not actually providing genuine safety to people. So this is a disaster, and it's of the utmost urgency that we review these legislative arrangements, because they are holding us back from having that cheap and actually clean energy that people need. And
again, reliable energy could be useful as well. Always so good to talk to you. Harry Wilkinson there from the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Philip Ingram listening to that. It is genuinely painful, a lot of this stuff. But again, this idea that, we constantly try and deal with the wrong end of the problem of high energy prices. Right? Or we'll make this person pay more, or put money. Whereas actually the solution is, why don't we have reliable fuels and energy that doesn't cost a fortune?
Get the energy prices down. We've got the most expensive energy prices in Europe, and that's affecting manufacturing, it's affecting money in people's pockets, affecting defence, everything across the board. It would be easy to get that down. And Donald Trump came up with saying, hey, get the taxes off the North Sea oil, start to exploit that more. Drill, baby, drill, and that's what we need to be doing.
I loved it when he was saying that to Keir Starmer, but of course, didn't like that at all, did he?
The body language was brilliant.
No, it was great, wasn't it? Thank you so much, Philip Ingram, for all your wise words throughout the show.